I was been very excited. I know we're running behind by about 10 minutes or so, but that gave me the opportunity to connect with all of them in person. And I'm really excited about the kind of diverse experience and stories that they bring to the session today. They don't need any introduction. Their body of work speaks for themselves. I think what we're here to talk about today is trends in 23. I like the openness of the topic so that we can put anything under that. But I thought we'll focus on 2 or 3 things that the audience can take away, right? And I thought maybe a good place to start, like we were speaking back there, is what's happening in the world of Web3 and Metaverse. There's so many layers to this buzz that's happening on social media. It'll be interesting to pick your brains on it. I'll probably start with a slightly loaded question. Web3, as we all know, is based on a very decentralized sort of philosophy, whose origins are in blockchain. But of course, then earlier this year, Facebook came up with the buzzword metaverse, and that sort of seems fluid enough to fit anything in it. So my question to you, in no particular order, is who wants to start? Is what do you make of this space? What are the opportunities it presents to marketers, and mostly why are you excited about it?
Okay, first of all, thank you. Like I was talking about earlier, right, it's a great privilege to be here. I turned 50, so it's quite a privilege being able to speak at a 40 under 40 event. In fact, I was very apprehensive when Chetan called and I said, what value do we expect from somebody like me in this forum? And he said, we are looking for diversity. So here I am, so thank you so much. Let me talk about metaverse first, right? And I think the day our friends from McKinsey announced, that the global spending on this kind of a digital infrastructure and digital landscape or virtual landscape would reach $5 trillion in 2030, and then Gartner announced 25% of people, I don't know who those people are at this point in time, by 2026 would spend 1 hour on the metaverse, okay? And I think those two set off a chain reaction and something that I call a hype cycle in technology, and also some kind of a metaverse FOMO syndrome, which leads bosses and boards to ask people like us, what are we doing in this space? But having said that, and as a result of which, look at some of the biggest brands, especially luxury brands that are already trying to vie for the pole position in this race. Hundreds of brands actually who have started doing something in that space. None of it is monetizable at this point at this point in time. SAP, the company that I represented, we decided to do something about it as well. In fact, there was this good old, campaign that we ran, which was like something called the Transformation Express, which was very physical. A bus which had all of our technology traveling to 13 cities, etc. At the end of it, we said, why don't we extend this experience to the metaverse, increasing the longevity of the campaign as well as the accessibility of it. And that resulted in a digital twin of that experience, which seems to be doing quite well purely because of the novelty factor. But as I said, monetizability is something that's still not in the horizon or on the horizon at this point in time. What it has also created is something called something that we call the perfect storm in this space, right? Especially with 5G coming in, we are expecting it to kind of democratize this whole experience, and things like integration of sensory experiences to the metaverse would probably make it a whole lot more richer. The second thing is, if you look at our homegrown companies like TCSs and the TechMs of the world, they've already announced metaverse practices. So who will do it? That answer is kind of emerging. And who within the company will do it? Well, there are those chief metaverse officers. That also is kind of, there are companies who have announced people with $1 million, $2 million packages being hired. It reminds me of the chief digital officers that we heard of earlier. So all of that is happening. But like I was speaking about earlier as well, there has to be one use case that needs to show me the money, right? Which will really make it real. We don't know what it is at this point.
Correct. Yes, it seems CMOs will survive for some time. But two things. One is, would metaverse really be only experiential, or will there be monetization opportunities, and how soon they're going to come? I think that will decide mass adoption of the opportunity also. Yes, boards are asking about what to do with metaverse, but I don't see FOMO happening as yet, because the questions are very, very monetization related or monetization driven, to say, can this really be a good opportunity to impact revenue, or in some ways expand the business? That's one part of that. And second is, I think metaverse has to come to a level of delivering those experiences at a mobile device level. Unless that happens, you're not seeing a mass scale use case emerging out of this. As long as, yes, it's a emerging opportunity, and therefore, like any other technology, it will go its own curve, and there'll come a point of inflection when it will just provide us those opportunities. But at this stage, I think one of the as he rightly said, use cases are yet to emerge. But to me, I think metaverses, delivering those experiences and opportunities on mobile as a device would be key for this to go forward.
I think for insurance, let me just take a quick example before I jump in. Let's say if I walk up to you and I say that spend 10,000 a year for the next 10 years, which is close to a lakh, and nobody in this room can give me in writing that you will not fall ill or get hospitalized. And I'm sure all of us are reading the kind of expenses the hospitals are taking in, at an average 5-6 lakhs once you go in and get admitted. Now I'm saying a lakh for 10 years, and no one can give me a guarantee that you don't walk into a hospital in the next 10 years. I don't want you guys to, but that's the harsh reality, the way we guys are living our life. Now, when I do that in person with you, I'm assuming that you will understand what I'm saying. Unfortunately, we're hardwired in a way to believe that nothing can happen to us, or we'll pray and we'll be out of that, right? Now come metaverse, where there is an avatar of you and there's an avatar of an insurance person. I can actually show you that in the next 5 years, because we'll have all your records of your medical illnesses, where we can say after 6 years, this is something that can happen to you. After 6 years, keeping the inflation in mind, these are the kind of expenses that can come to you. We know how much you're making, so this is the amount of money you can save, which means you're saving 4 lakhs, bill is 10 lakhs. How do you pay that extra 6 lakhs? Now, if I can simulate that and show it to you and tell you that, you know what, you need this extra 10,000 worth of insurance, which is close to 10 lakhs a year, which is a big amount for the money that you're spending. I think it's a clear-cut understanding for most who appreciate the value of their own money and their lives to jump in and say that I wouldn't mind buying this. Because right now I'm working on your ability to check what can happen to you. Whereas if I show it to you, and this is your own avatar, I think acceptance and understanding will be a lot higher. And I see the penetration really, really going in, because I'm showing it happen to you with your track record, right? So I think that's something that could be really, really powerful. So, a use case for insurance for you, if at all.
Absolutely, and I hope we fall ill only in the metaverse. And
absolutely. Disclaimer.
And the surgeon, I don't know if I'll rely on a digital or a bot to do my surgery in the metaverse, but then hopefully never.
Great. I think Siddharth's going to have a very different point of view on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree on the aspect of being able to monetize data. But going to the show me the money, and I completely agree with that. I think that the level of penetration that you need and the adoption of the metaverse for the technology investment that you're going to be putting in to be scalable in terms of monetizing it is still to be determined, right? But at the same time, you have obvious applications for that. We're going to follow as sellers and distributors where the consumer is. So the metaverse is essentially, I mean, if we're not complicating it to a great extent, it's a 3D version of the internet, right? If people are going to go onto the internet, the first things that they're going to do, and what happened, which we've seen with digital commerce and e-commerce, is you're going to have transactions happening over there. So if the consumer is in the metaverse, that's the first place where you want to start selling things. That's where your insurance agent will go. That's where we want to start selling any product or service, right? So there are use cases in airlines, for example, Vueling Airlines in Spain has already started selling flight tickets in the metaverse. So the obvious application is obviously wherever consumers are, whichever space is there, us as marketers and salespeople will follow them into that space and try to sell the wares that we have to sell, right? The second aspect comes with the power of being able to do that at a lower cost than traditional channels. Whether it is the digital channels or the offline channels, comes from the ability to monetize the data that people are sharing, because the kind of data they're sharing in the metaverse is significantly more than what they're sharing on Web 2.0 or on offline channels. And there the complexity then becomes, in my mind, what you should be able to do is allow and empower the individuals who are there to monetize their own data, to say, yes, I am in the metaverse. Obviously, you will be collecting a lot of data about, not just my clickstream interactions, but actually everything from VR to AR, and I think it will move from smartphones into AR devices. How do you monetize the data to provide a more personalized experience within the metaverse, but also in the real world? The use case you gave, for example, and I think that becomes the cornerstone of where brands and consumers will be able to bring value back into the transaction between the brand and the consumer, and actually cut down many of the intermediaries which have existed in a Web 2.0 world.
No, you had a very interesting definition of what metaverse itself is, right? Like if you go the Puritan definition of it as an extension of blockchain, then you would probably call only those platforms as metaverse which are decentralized in nature, right? But I think what has happened is that we are taking a slightly more liberal definition of it, which is your avatar coming in, or 3D experience that you're experiencing, or AR for that matter, which all have been happening in gaming for a while, right? Like in places like Fortnite, etc. These avatars, these experiences have been there for a while. I feel that in the pure decentralized world, for example, you take a platform like a Decentraland, and the kind of experiences that you see today, they're not that exciting as what you see in films or in other games, right? So I feel in some ways we are going through the same thing in metaverse that we're going through with metro construction, where probably for the next 3-4 years, this generation will have to endure great user experience being built, and then we'll sort of eventually get to that space. But I want to end this segment of this discussion, something that I've not run by you, so don't kill me for this, with one big prediction that you will see, that you think will happen in the next 5 years in the Web3 space. Vikram, why don't I start with you?
Well, for me, I've been eating, sleeping, breathing insurance. So right. Personally, exactly what I said, but not just for health. Another issue which metaverse could lead to is, in today's day and age, there's a lot of cyber that happens, right? Cyber attacks. Yeah. You are buying a lot of virtual land through cryptocurrencies, correct? Yeah. A lot of people now,
it's a big thing.
Now the land that you own is a part of your economic status, that, oh, I have that virtual land. How do you also protect that? See, all I'm saying is that anything that I could do in the real world is something that I can easily hop, skip, and jump and do in the metaverse. So for me, I think anything under the sun in the metaverse is something that we can really jump on.
Yeah. In fact, my apologies, I should have started with my own prediction. I think one thing that will happen is, we might probably, today we have brands which exist in the physical world which also are trying to break in. Maybe in 5 years from now, we'll have a set of brands who only exist in the metaverse, right? There might be a drink that you consume only there. There might be a place that you go only there, right? So that's my prediction. But Rahul, you have a...
No, I didn't. Actually, you stole my thunder. That was supposed to be my prediction. Like we've seen with the internet revolution and mobile, cloud, etc., there will be, like the brands that we call digital natives today, you will have those metaverse native brands emerging. Right. So that was my prediction too.
Prasun, I know you feel like, show me a great killer application before I even talk, sort of a stand. But any predictions?
No, yes. I think I would stick my neck out by saying metaverse itself will become very mainstream. It sounds a little pompous at this point of time, but if you really look at Gen Z and beyond, and what's happening in the gaming arena, the right example that you quoted, and the monetization opportunities that emerged and how big it is right now, metaverse is just going to go that way. And more brands are going to create a whole lot of solutions which are only meant for that universe, and monetize in that universe. And the consumers of 10 years from now are not the ones that we're dealing with today. Okay, and their cues and their influences and their whole worldview is going to be dramatically different from where we are, and therefore something like metaverse will be far more mainstream as long as the technology keeps developing at the pace that it's developing.
Right.
I'm going to add to and pick up from that. I mean, I think, so the metaverse is something which is not, while we're coining it now and it's become in vogue now and in reality now, it's a term that was coined in the 90s in science fiction, right?
Yes.
And interestingly, a lot of what we're seeing today or the applications of it are borrowing from science fiction of the 80s and the 90s. There's a cyberpunk author called William Gibson who essentially talked about, so what his tenet was is the future's already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. Right. So it's the same thing that Hal Varian, who's the chief economist of Google, said. It says, if you want to see what's going to happen 10 years from now in the mainstream, look at the goods and services that luxury consumers are consuming today. That, albeit in the not the same way, will begin to get consumed with the application of technology 10 years down the line by mainstream consumers, and then another 10 years down the line by mass or poorer consumers, right? So if you look at, say, the fact that the rich had butlers, and now you have virtual assistants, or the rich had chauffeurs and now you have Uber, right? So all of that is driven essentially by technology in some way, and the metaverse will empower the same thing. You just look at what the rich are consuming today and the experiences they're consuming, and imagine that you'll be able to distribute that at scale through applications like Web 3.0, through NFTs, through decentralization, through the ownership of art, for example, which has got decentralized through NFTs, is happening because only the rich had access to it, but now many more people will have a more decentralized access to it.
Beautifully put. I love the line that the future is already here.
Yeah, which is true of the internet as well, right? I mean, the internet existed for much longer before it became democratized, right? It was very elitist. Not just the rich, it's just the academics and the technology folks had access to that experience. But once it got democratized, it became the common man's.
And I think biggest impetus would be 5G. And, and with 5G on the anvil, the time for really considering, developing solid use cases in metaverse is now.
Most definitely for the user experience of that. I think that's sort of like a semicolon in the discussion. We discuss one trend for 3/4 of the time, so we'll probably move a little faster. The one other thing I want to squeeze in before we walk off the stage is something else that has been brewing and transforming for the last 3-4 years. And Prasun, when we were talking off stage, you sort of conceptualized it in one sentence and said that, listen, 80% of marketing today is performance, right? And where I was going is that the way what we call as commerce has sort of evolved, especially in the last 5 years, especially in the last 3 years or so. How is that sort of affecting some of the businesses you're leading? And what would you want to give as a takeaway to the audience is the next segue. Maybe I'll start with you because yours is it lives and dies on performance.
Yeah. See, digital commerce is not a concept, it's the reality of our life right now. Okay. Just Dial is a hyperlocal platform. We work with SMEs, MSMEs, very, very small entrepreneurs, service providers, and sellers and resellers, etc. The amount of excitement around digitizing their businesses, that's there. The amount of opportunity that they see, that digital can deliver to them. We have been working on a whole host of new solutions right now. But just to tell you that Anand Mithai Bhandar of Chamba in Himachal Pradesh is very, very keen to sell pan-India. And they are, very excited about an opportunity where they can have their own digital catalog and they can really expand themselves, beyond their traditional geographies. So it's like everyone is becoming an MNC. In good old days, only Unilever or Hindustan Lever had that a thing of distribution across 200,000 villages, and
Yeah.
today every small business can have the same distribution power, all thanks to the digital commerce platforms that are there. So it's no longer a domain of big brands. It's no longer a domain of big businesses. There are a lot of small entrepreneurs, small guys who are getting onto it, and their ambitions are pretty big. So as soon as soon as a lot of these things get democratized as well, and get spread, this will be an interesting play to have.
Right. Vikram, in your case, it is one of the most, I wouldn't say it is entirely undifferentiated, but from a consumer perception, right, it's a very transactional category, isn't it? Now, in that, performance often gives a brand a disproportionate edge, isn't it? How are you seeing how commerce is evolving right now?
So for insurance, thankfully, there was a time up until maybe a few years back, we were solely dependent on agents, because that's the fastest and the best way of selling insurance, because there's a face attached to it. With the advancement of commerce coming in, a lot of people are now okay with swiping their cards, sharing contact details, sharing card details on the web, and transacting. Specifically for products like motor, cyber, and pet dog insurance, health is something we're still not seeing a lot of traction, because they still want to see someone if something wrong happens with me, right? But motor, pet dog, and cyber is something we're seeing a lot of people appreciating the fact that, you're available at beck and call, just a click away. So we're seeing a lot of people trickle in for those businesses. One drawback which this brings in is because there are a lot of aggregators out there, right, who are also showcasing policies of various organizations, and then people get the opportunity of comparing. So that's where it gives you a dent, because at Bajaj, that is Bajaj Allianz General, we take a lot of pride in having insurances that are relatively priced higher. So in this space, at times it gives us a kick in the back. But having said that, because of the brand name that we have, I think because of digital commerce, we've been able to reach far and beyond places we don't have people to reach. So it could be tier 3, tier 4, extreme east areas where we don't have people. This is something that has given us a solid edge, also because of the brand that we hold, right? So it gives you an instant uptake for the end user to jump in and identify and appreciate the product.
Right. Great. We are sort of closing, and I just wanted closing remarks from Rahul and Siddhartha, towards the end. Which is actually, we spoke about commerce, we spoke about metaverse, and all of these are extraordinarily evolving pieces. But when it comes to marketing, some of the fundamentals, some of the first principles still remain the same, isn't it? Rahul, you started by saying, you're here to bring diversity, but you also bring in a whole range of experience on how this space has evolved over time, right? How do you see some of these classical principles still being very relevant, and in fact probably more potent than ever?
Absolutely, totally relevant even today. Like I mentioned, I come from an era when storytelling was not even a fancy marketing term, right? It was a way of life. I still believe marketing is half science, half art. And my pet peeve with the current generation of talent is, 80% of marketing is performance, but I think, the art of telling a compelling story, which still remains, I believe, still remains central, is getting overwhelmed by the technology of it, right? As in the algorithms and, basically overwhelmed by the science but I believe it will continue to stay central to the practice of marketing, in my opinion, irrespective of how much technology comes in. And the second thing is, especially in my business, our marketing mix is heavily loaded with physical experiences, right? Especially events of all shapes, sizes. I still believe physical experiences will continue to exist. They will probably become rarer and more premium. And, just imagine, I was talking about this example earlier as well. Just imagine Wimbledon, the center court final match. In 5 years from now, millions will be able to experience it via the metaverse. But can it replace the actual experience of being there? Maybe not, right? So that will become more exclusive, more rare, more premium. But yeah, it will democratize it. The technology will democratize it as well. So it will coexist at the top end of the experience, pyramid, if I may.
Beautifully put. So that yours is the last word.
Thanks. And I couldn't agree more. I think one of the tenets, which is there's performance by its very nature is transactional, right? So you're trying to monetize every single transaction and show an ROI on that. That is not lending itself towards a long-term brand building strategy. What you're able to do with performance because of AI or because of programmatic and every investment that comes in is you're essentially giving an aggregator power and squeezing out the margins by enabling the individual who is running that performance marketing to empower the transaction rather than the brand.
Right.
If you want to build trust at a brand level, and if we start talking about monetizing of data, ultimately all of us as individuals are not going to share all our personal health data, for example, unless I trust the insurer with whom I'm sharing it, right? Or my day-to-day data. So it will ultimately boil down to saying there are a few brands who I trust, who I'm willing to share data with, in exchange for the confidence that they will be able to give me a more personalized experience and not monetize my data to increase their margins. And so ultimately, it comes back to the traditional tenet of saying, I need to be a brand that people can trust. And that brand building is getting lost in the performance side of it and will come back naturally because that's where people will gravitate to.
Right. Beautifully put. I would love to keep this going for another hour or so, but I think we are totally out of time. So thank you so much. Are we taking any questions?